If you've ever worked in a government job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes and you earned a pension from that work, it's critical that you understand the government pension offset because this rule can drastically reduce or even completely eliminate your Social Security spousal or survivor's benefits. This rule is often confused with the windfall elimination provision, so it's important to understand the difference. The windfall elimination provision only applies to individuals who are entitled to a Social Security benefit based on their own work history and have a pension from work where they did not pay Social Security taxes. Now, I have a video dedicated to the windfall elimination provision, and if you haven't watched that yet, you should. It's an excellent companion to this video on the government pension offset. You need to understand both of these. The government pension offset is different than the windfall elimination provision because it only applies to individuals who are entitled to a Social Security benefit as a survivor or spouse and has a pension from a federal, state, or local government employer where they did not pay Social Security taxes. Now, the mechanics of the government pension offset are really simple. Your survivors or spousal benefits from Social Security will be reduced by an amount equal to 2/3 of your gross pension. For example, if someone has a pension of, let's say, $3,000, the government pension offset amount would be $2,000, 2/3 of that $3,000 pension. That $2,000 is the amount that would be deducted from any Social Security spousal or survivor benefits before they were paid. So, for example, let's look at Susan. She worked as a school teacher for 30 years. Her years teaching were spent in Texas, which is one of the 15 states where teachers are not covered by Social Security. And when she retired, she began receiving her Texas Teacher's Retirement Pension of $3,000 per month. Now, her husband retired at the same time and filed for his Social Security benefits of $2,200 per month. Now, ordinarily, Susan would be eligible for a spousal benefit from Social Security of 1/2 of the higher earner's benefit. And in this case, that means that without the government pension offset, she could receive $1,100 per month in spousal benefits. But the offset of 2/3 of her TRS pension is subtracted first. That's $2,000, which means that her spousal benefit is completely offset and she wouldn't receive any spousal benefits. So let's fast forward 3 years, and now Susan's husband dies. If Susan wasn't subject to the government pension offset, she could have received the full benefit her husband was receiving when he died, but she has a non-covered pension. The offset amount of $2,000 is subtracted first, which leaves her a survivor benefit of $200. Now, this offset is a nasty surprise for the people who don't know about it or fully understand how to plan for it. To avoid finding yourself in that situation, it's important to understand this rule. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the top 7 questions I get about the government pension offset. And I hope that'll help you understand how this works and how you'll be affected so you can better plan for a successful retirement. Those questions are, why does the government pension offset exist? What if a retiree inherits their spouse's non-covered pension? Do you need to tell the Social Security Administration if your pension has a cost of living adjustment? How do 401k, 403bs, 457, and optional retirement plans factor into the government pension offset rule? Does the government pension offset apply to foreign pensions? And then some of the ways to sidestep the government pension offset. What is the government pension offset last 60-month rule, which was formerly known as the last day rule? And then, can you just take out your pension in a lump sum, not worry about the government pension offset? So I want to walk through each of these questions individually, and when we're finished, I think you'll feel more confident about managing this part of your retirement plan. So first up, why does the government pension offset even exist? Well, in the past, many people felt that workers who received a pension from a federal, state, or local government job and did not pay into Social Security through Social Security taxes were taking advantage of the system. The rationale was that Social Security spousal and survivors benefits are intended for beneficiaries who hadn't worked and were financially dependent on a working spouse for income. So in that case, receiving both a government pension from a job as well as a Social Security spousal or survivor benefit was termed double dipping. So in the 1970s, we saw a big outcry and the pushback against the system that allowed workers to get both of these benefits, and the government pension offset was implemented to help correct this problem. Now, the other side of this argument also has a valid point when they say that this is effectively a penalty for public service. If this individual would have just stayed at home and never worked, they'd be able to get a full spousal or survivor benefit. I can see both sides of the argument. Now, an interesting side note on the government pension offset. There's been a lot of talk about reform coming that would stop some of the penalties that impact public servants, but most of them only deal with the windfall elimination provision. It's seldom that we ever hear talk about reforming the government pension offset. So this is probably something that we need to accept is just here to stay, unfortunately. And now the next question. What if a retiree inherits a spouse's non-covered pension? Will the government pension offset apply after you die and name your spouse as the beneficiary of your pension from your non-covered work, or that work that you didn't pay into Social Security on? Thankfully, the short answer is no. A surviving spouse's own individual Social Security benefits would not be affected if the other spouse with the non-covered pension named them as a beneficiary on that pension. The Social Security Administration addresses this issue in its manual, where they say the government pension offset applies to a spouse's Social Security benefit for any month the spouse receives a pension based upon his or her own government employment not covered under Social Security. The summary of this is your spouse cannot be affected by the government pension offset if they didn't earn the pension. So up next, do I need to tell the Social Security Administration about my pension's cost of living adjustment? Yes, you do need to report cost of living adjustments to the Social Security Administration. If you have one of those pensions that has this feature built in, it's really important to remember that the offset amount, that government pension offset, is calculated as a percentage of your pension. And this means that the corresponding amount of the reduction to your Social Security benefits will change as your pension increases over time to account for that cost of living. Don't be tempted to forget to tell the Social Security Administration. They may not notice right away, but they will eventually catch the discrepancy, and you don't want to receive one of the nasty overpayment notices one day in the future. I promise you that. Next question. How do other retirement plans like 401k, 403b plans, 457 and optional retirement plans, also known as just ORP plans, factor into the government pension offset rule? So a lot of government employers offer options for retirement savings. In some cases, this is a supplemental retirement plan in addition to the pension plan. And in other cases, it's a plan that allows you to opt out of the pension plan for a defined contribution plan. An example of an opt-out plan would be the ORP plan that's pretty common in higher education. Here's what the Social Security Administration handbook says about these. Payments from a defined benefit plan or defined contribution plan, and they give the example of 401k, 403b, 457, based on earnings from non-covered government employment, are pensions subject to the government pension offset regardless of the source of contributions, employer only, employee only, or a combination of both, if the plan is the employee's primary retirement plan. If the plan is a supplemental plan, the payments are subject to the government pension offset when the plan payments contain employer or both employer and employee contributions. So essentially, if the savings plan is a supplemental plan and only contains the worker's contributions, it will be subject to neither the WELP nor the GPO reduction. But if the plan is a worker's primary plan or a supplemental plan and only contains the employer's contributions, or even a combination of employers and employees, it will trigger the government pension offset. Now, the next question I got wrong for years until my friend Jim Blankenship from Financial Ducks in a Row set me straight. That question is, does the government pension offset apply to foreign pensions? The short answer is no. A foreign pension will not trigger the application of the government pension offset, but it will trigger the windfall elimination provision. Now, the government pension offset has a very clear distinction of only being applied if an individual has a non-covered pension from government employment. The Social Security Manual defines the term government clearly by saying, for GPO purposes, government means federal, the United States government, including military service, state, the 50 states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, so on and so forth, local, a political subdivision including wholly owned instrumentalities, but not including interstate instrumentalities. And then they go on to say, for a description of political subdivisions, and those links are going to be down in the description as well, where you can continue that research to make sure your employer is not considered a government employer. The windfall elimination provision, on the other hand, is applied to any individual with a non-covered pension, even if it is from a foreign pension. Again, be sure to watch my video on the windfall provision. I'm going to link it up in the description, so you need to go out and check that out. And now we move on to the final two rules, and both of these deal with ways that you could potentially sidestep the government pension offset. The first is known as the last 60-month rule. Now, this was formerly referred to as the last day rule, and it's the first approach to take if you don't want the provision to impact your Social Security benefits. The last 60-month rule helps you avoid being subjected to the government pension offset if you meet the following criteria. If you work at a job where you contribute to Social Security for the last 60 months of employment, and that job is covered by the same retirement plan. So for example, if you work in Texas and you're covered under TRS, you couldn't switch to the Arkansas retirement system and have this work. The retirement plan has to be the same. The Social Security Administration says the following about this last 60-month rule. They say that the government pension offset does not apply if an individual is covered by both the government retirement system and Social Security throughout his or her last 60 months of federal, state, or local government service. So here's an example of how this would work. Let's say that Dave worked for the Atlanta Independent School District for the last 30 years, and before he retired, he resigned from his position at Atlanta ISD, and he worked for an additional 5 years at the Austin Independent School District. Now, Austin is one of those districts that participates in both Social Security and the Texas Teachers Retirement System. Now, by working the last 60 months of his career in a job with covered income, because it paid into the Social Security system, Dave will not be subject to the GPO rule when he files for Social Security benefits. So it's absolutely possible, but the better question might be, would it be worth the hassle of a late career change to exempt yourself from the offset? So here's some numbers, and these may help you decide for yourself. Let's assume that your spouse has a Social Security benefit of $2,000 per month at their full retirement age. Now, if you could sidestep the government pension offset, you could be eligible for a spousal benefit of $1,000 per month at your full retirement age. And if we assume that Social Security has an average cost of living adjustment of 2% per year and that your retirement lasts for 20 years, spousal benefit would pay you nearly $300,000 in lifetime benefit payments. So that's for spousal benefits. Now, let's assume that your spouse dies, and now you'd be eligible for a survivor benefit. Using the same cost of living and life expectancy number, that total payment would be worth almost $600,000 in lifetime benefit payments. For the right situation, and those who are willing to make a change for the last 5 years, this could make a big difference. The next question I get about sidestepping the government pension offset is, can you take out your pension in a lump sum to avoid it? The short answer, but incomplete answer, is yes. You can completely withdraw your pension plan, and you'd have to withdraw your contributions and interest and forfeit your future rights to the pension. The Social Security Administration says this on their page that's titled Determining Pension Applicability and Pension Amount. Withdrawals from a defined benefit plan before or after eligibility for the pension of only employee contributions plus any interest, for example, none of the employer contributions are included in the withdrawal, and whereby the employee forfeits all rights to a pension are not pensions for GPO purposes. This rule applies even if the employer paid the employee contributions for the employee. And then there's an example, and then they say, any other separation payment, withdrawal, or refund that consists of both employer and employee contributions from a defined benefit or defined contribution plan is a pension subject to the government pension offset. So if you do pursue this strategy to avoid the government pension offset, there is one major thing you need to make sure you do right. Take only the amount that you put into your pension plus interest. If the employer contribution is included in the withdrawal, you're still going to be subject to the government pension offset. Now, just because you can do this doesn't mean it's a good idea. Withdrawing your pension only for the sake of avoiding having the government pension offset hit your Social Security benefits may not make sense at all. There are some circumstances where this could make sense, but for most, being subject to the government pension offset is probably going to result in a higher total payment amount than cashing out their pension. If you want to pursue this, just do it carefully and with a lot of number crunching and help from advisors who understand these rules. Now, up next, I want you to watch this video on the windfall elimination provision. This is the rule that's related to the government pension offset, but it's very different at the same time. And if you have a pension from work where you didn't pay into Social Security, you need to understand both of these rules. And in this video, I break this down and tell you how it works so you'll know what to expect. So just click here and I'll see you there.